A lot of people often find it tricky to tell apart Americans from the US and Canadians. Let me give you a little analogy. Americans are kinda like teenage boys, energetic, confident, and opinionated. Canadians, on the other hand, are more like teenage girls. They'll smile politely to your face, but later, they'll gossip behind your back. That being said, let's break down the flag. The flag shows a red field with a white square in the center, and in the middle of it all sits a single red maple leaf with 11 points. The red represents sacrifice during both world wars, while the white stands for peace, neutrality, and tranquility. The maple leaf itself has been a symbol of Canada for centuries, even under British rule. Some Canadians like to say the 11 points represent the provinces, with the last one for the territories, but, nah, that's not true. It's just how the leaf naturally looks. Oh, and don't forget, Quebec would much rather wave this flag instead of the maple leaf. But we'll get into that later. And alright, so Canada is massive. It's the second largest country in the world, which pretty much guarantees a ton of interesting things when it comes to administrative divisions. First of all, Canada sits on the North American continent, right above the United States, bordered by 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Pacific. The nation spans 6 time zones, and is split into 10 provinces. Yes, Newfoundland and Labrador count as 1 and 3 northern territories. The capital city, Ottawa, is found in Ontario. Hoo. Now let's have a little fun. Canada's domain is full of sovereign oddities and semi-autonomous quirks. First off, the border. At more than 8,800 kilometers, about 5,500 miles. With thousands of markers scattered across it, Canada and the US share the world's longest border between any 2 nations. Things on the east coast are mostly calm, except for one island still disputed with Denmark, and another tiny one close enough to kayak to that France stubbornly refuses to give up. But once you reach the Quebec-Vermont border, things start getting messiest, especially in the towns of Stansted and Derby Line. Because the town was built before modern borders existed, you'll find houses, shops, and buildings straddling the line. The Haskell Free Library even has its border literally running through the reading room, with an entrance for Canadians and another for Americans. People have to enter on their side, and if they exit in the other country, they're required to stick to the sidewalk and head straight to customs. Step onto the street without reporting, and you risk getting arrested. Then you've got the hilariously confusing Northwest Angle, technically part of Minnesota, mostly owned by Ojibwe tribes, tucked into Lake of the Woods. Perfect little vacation. Spots like Massacre Island and Little Massacre Island can be found there. The rest of the border tries to follow the 49th parallel but zigzags a bit, and even has 4 airports where the runways run right across or parallel to the border. Nearly 80% of Canadians live within 100 miles, 160 kilometers of the US border. The further north you go, though, the fuzzier things get. Much of that land is still barely integrated. Only 2 main highways connect to Yukon and the Northwest Territories, and there are no roads leading into Nunavut at all. The only way in is by boat or plane. Sure, you could technically walk across, but, yeah, that would suck. Speaking of, Nunavut, Canada, has the northernmost inhabited settlement in the world, a perpetually frozen outpost with only about 5 people living there year-round, serving as both a military station and a research base. But here's the thing: Canada's administrative divisions work fairly seamlessly until you get to Quebec. While Quebec is still legally a province, they've made it loud and clear they see themselves as distinct, with a strong sense of Quebecois nationalism, sometimes even pushing towards separatism. Now, of course, much of Canada's structure is shaped by the landscape itself. Once again, Canada is huge. People often call it the Great White North, but not all of it is frozen tundra. Canada's geography is a mix of geological and me-te-o-log-i-cal, yes, that's a word, factors. One of the most striking features, Hudson Bay, the second largest bay on Earth after the Bay of Bengal, and the largest one that freezes completely in winter. It drains water from nearly half of Canada, plus part of the US Northwest. And here's the weird part. Hudson Bay sits on a gravitational anomaly. Gravity there is actually weaker than most of the planet. Some size-wise reason involving convection and ice melt rebound. Yada yada yada. Hey, wanna lose some weight? Try the new Hudson 90X plan. Includes a workout, diet, and moving to Hudson Bay. Truth is, almost nobody lives along Hudson Bay. The rocky pond-filled terrain makes it almost impossible to build proper roads. And with 2 to 3 million lakes scattered across Canada, about 60% of the world's total lakes and around 30% of its fresh water are located here. That's why Canadian tap water can sometimes be better quality than bottled. Much of this is thanks to the Canadian Shield, vast expanse of exposed Precambrian rock covering half the country. There's little soil, but it's rich in resources, holding massive deposits of nickel, copper, silver, and gold. Fun fact, 2/3 of the world's cesium comes from just one mine in Manitoba. Here's another quirky one. Canada is home to the world's largest third-order lake island in a lake on an island in a lake on an island, found on Victoria Island. This tiny 4-acre speck was discovered by map nerds on Google Maps only recently. It has no name, and has probably never had a human set foot on it. I'll go if nobody else will just need a sponsor. Aunt Jemima. Call Me. Canada also has 2 of the 10 largest impact craters on Earth: Sudbury, in Ontario, and Manicouagan, in Quebec, which is so perfectly round, you can spot it from space. And rapid-fire facts time. 40% of Canada is forested, holding 1/10 of the world's total forests. Over 60% of all polar bears live here. The Bay of Fundy has the highest tidal range in the world, over 16 meters. Niagara Falls is iconic. Mount Thor has the highest vertical drop. Quebec makes 70% of the world's maple syrup, and even keeps 222,000 barrels in reserve. Prince Edward Island's beaches squeak when you walk on them, and the Great Bear and Great Slave Lakes are Canada's largest inland lakes, besides the Great Lakes. Now, Canada's population about 35 million, one of the least dense in the world. Roughly 3/4 are white, 14% Asian, 5% Indigenous, 3% Black, 2% Latino, and the rest a mix of everything else. About 1 in 3 Canadians can speak French, or at least understand it. And yes, Quebec dominates the French-speaking identity. But French communities also exist in Ontario, Manitoba, and the Maritimes, like New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. The Acadian French there are culturally distinct, and their descendants eventually became the Cajuns in Louisiana. After being expelled by the British in the 1700s, 1 in 5 Canadians is foreign-born, making it very diverse, especially by entertainment, industry standards, and now, spotlight time: Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Altogether, these territories only have about 110,000 people, making them the most sparsely populated regions. About 850,000 Indigenous peoples live across Canada, divided into First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. First Nations are mostly southern forest tribes, Métis are mixed heritage, and Inuit are Arctic natives. The 3 territories differ too. Yukon is mostly white. Northwest Territories have strong First Nation presence, and Nunavut is almost entirely Inuit. Nunavut even split from Northwest Territories in 1999 to govern itself. Inuit culture is deeply unique. They speak Inuktitut related to Greenlandic, have their own written script, and maintain vibrant traditions, music, and throat games. If you ever visit, you have to try whale blubber. And finally, Canada's foreign policy. Basically, they're friends with everyone. They encourage diplomacy with as many countries as possible. Even when the US embargoed Cuba, Canada kept good. Ties Canada is part of both the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth realm, meaning they get along with most former British territories, as well as French-speaking countries. Unlike the US, which complains about Mexican immigration, Canada actually encourages it due to a low birth rate and aging population. They've relaxed immigration policies, advertising in Mexico to attract workers. Of course, their closest bond is with the United States. Some say they're like siblings, others like best friends, but really, they're like high school sweethearts. Canada and the US have always had each other's backs. The US is Canada's biggest trading partner, and they share the tightest military and diplomatic ties. But where the US won independence through war, Canada did so through negotiation. America is a melting pot where cultures blend, while Canada's a mosaic where cultures coexist distinctly. In the end, they're like a teenage couple teasing each other, but totally making out in the back of the movie theater. So, Canada, you sweet little maple pancake, I'll pick you up at 7. We're going out for breakfast on that island. In a lake on an island, in a lake on an island. Stay tuned. Cape Verde's up next.